The moon glowed like a pale blue jewel against the darkness of space. Every 50 cycles, the greatest species of the galaxy gathered here for the summit. It was a place of politics, of power, and of proving one's worth. Ships from 100 worlds filled the skies, carrying warriors, diplomats, and royalty. Among them was a small vessel from Earth. Ho stood at the window of the human ship, watching the alien crafts pass by. Some were massive, larger than entire cities. Others moved with impossible speed, leaving trails of light behind them. The human ship looked like a toy compared to them. "Nervous?" asked Captain Sung, walking up beside him. Ho shook his head, just thinking. "About what?" "About how small we are." Sung laughed softly. He was a tall man in his 40s with gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had fought in 3 wars and trained soldiers for 20 years. "We are small," he admitted. "But size isn't everything. Remember that." Ho nodded, but he wasn't sure he believed it. He was only 19 years old. He was supposed to be back on Earth, finishing his training. But when Sergeant Park fell sick 2 days before departure, they needed someone to fill the spot. Ho was chosen because he was available, not because he was ready. The other members of the delegation didn't say it out loud, but he could see it in their eyes. They thought he was too young, too inexperienced, a mistake. Maybe they were right. The ship landed on surface and the human delegation stepped out onto alien ground. The air was thin and cold, filled with strange smells. Massive structures rose around them, built from materials that seemed to glow from within. Alien species walked past in every direction. Some had 4 arms, some had scales, some floated instead of walking. And all of them looked at the humans with the same expression. Amusement, pity, contempt. "Infant species," someone muttered as they passed. The voice came from a tall creature with gray skin and yellow eyes. "They still measure their lives in single centuries." Laughter followed from others nearby. Ho kept his face calm. He had expected this. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 30 years ago. To species that lived for thousands of years, humans were bobbies, newcomers, weak. The delegation made their way through the crowds toward the main hall. A massive warrior blocked their path. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 muscular arms and a face like carved stone. He looked down at the humans and grinned. "Move aside, little ones," he said. "Real warriors are walking here." The other humans tensed, but they moved. There was no point in fighting. They could crush any of them with one hand. Ho was the last to move. As he stepped aside, this elbow caught him in the shoulder, shoving him hard. Ho stumbled but didn't fall. He caught his balance, straightened his uniform, and kept walking. He didn't look back, he didn't curse, he didn't react at all. From high above, someone was watching. Princess Lyra of the Empire stood on her crystal balcony, observing the arriving delegations. She had done this many times before. Every summit brought the same faces, the same games, the same boring warriors seeking her hand. She was the 3rd daughter of Emperor, and she was considered the most beautiful princess in 3 star systems. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes like liquid mercury, her hair as white as starlight. Suitors had come from every corner of the galaxy to win her favor. She had rejected them all. The champions were too arrogant, the assassins were too cold, the warlords were too brutal. After 300 years, Lyra had seen every type of warrior the galaxy could offer. None of them interested her. "The delegations are nearly complete, Highness," said her attendant, a small woman named. "Shall I prepare your formal appearance?" In a moment, Lyra's eyes moved across the crowds below, all the usual powers, and then she noticed something different. A small group of creatures she didn't immediately recognize. They walked upright, with soft skin and simple features. They wore plain uniforms and carried no visible weapons. "What species is that?" The attendant followed her gaze. Those are humans, Highness, from the planet Earth. They joined the Alliance recently. Humans, Lyra repeated. She had heard of them. The other species called them weak, fragile, short-lived. They were considered barely worth noticing. Yet Lyra found herself unable to look away. She watched as a shoved one of them aside. The human was young, younger than the others. He stumbled from the blow but didn't fall. And then he did something that made Lyra lean forward on her balcony. Nothing. He did nothing. No anger, no fear, no wounded pride. He simply adjusted himself and continued walking as if that didn't exist, as if the insult meant nothing, as if he had already moved past it and was thinking about something else entirely. Lyra had seen warriors respond to insults in many ways. Some fought, some submitted, some burned with hidden rage, but she had never seen someone simply let it go, not from weakness but from choice. Interesting, she murmured. The humans, Highness, sounded surprised. They are considered the weakest species in the Alliance. Their bodies are fragile. They live less than 100 years. They have no natural weapons, no special abilities. And yet they are here, Lyra said, at a summit meant for the greatest powers in the galaxy. Some say they were invited out of pity. Perhaps, Lyra watched the young human disappear into the main hall, or perhaps no one has given them a reason to show what they really are. That night the opening ceremony brought all delegations together. Lyra sat in the royal section with her father and sisters, dressed in silk that shimmered like liquid moonlight. Countless eyes watched her. Countless warriors hoped to catch her attention. She ignored them all. Her eyes searched the crowd until she found the human delegation. They stood in a far corner, separated from the main gathering. The other species had created an invisible wall around them, keeping their distance as if humanity was a disease. The young one stood at the back. He was watching the ceremony with quiet attention, studying everything, learning. His eyes moved from face to face, taking in details that others might miss. Lyra smiled to herself. "You seem distracted, daughter," Emperor said. He was an ancient, his silver skin lined with age, his eyes still sharp. "Just observing, father. The champion is impressive this cycle. Perhaps you might consider." "No." Sighed, he had stopped trying to understand his third daughter long ago. "Very well, but you must choose someone eventually. The law requires it." "I know." Lyra's eyes remained on the young human, "and I believe I may have found something worth choosing." The Emperor followed her gaze and his face filled with confusion. "The humans, Lyra, you cannot be serious." "I'm always serious, father. That's my curse." She stood, her silk gown flowing around her. "I want to see tomorrow's trial. I have a feeling it will be more interesting than usual." She left the ceremony early, her mind full of questions. Who was this young human who walked with such quiet certainty? Why did he seem so different from the others? And what would happen when the galaxy finally stopped laughing at him? Lyra didn't have the answers yet, but she intended to find them. Below in the corner of the great hall, Ho felt a strange sensation, like someone was watching him. He looked up toward the royal section but saw only empty seats. He shook off the feeling and returned his attention to the ceremony. Tomorrow would bring the trial of champions. Tomorrow would bring pain and blood and glory. And tomorrow, everything would begin to change. The morning brought bad news. Ho woke to the sound of shouting. He dressed quickly and ran to the captain's quarters where the rest of the delegation had already gathered. Captain Sung lay on his bed, his face pale and covered in sweat. His hands shook. His breathing was shallow. "Poison," said Lieutenant, the team's medic. Her face was tight with anger. "Someone put it in his water last night. It's not deadly, but he won't be able to stand for at least 3 days." "Who would do this?" another soldier asked. "Someone who doesn't want us in the trial," replied. "Someone who wants to humiliate humanity." The trial of champions was an ancient tradition. Every species at the summit could send one warrior to compete in a series of challenges. It was not required, but refusing to participate brought great shame. A species that refused was seen as weak, cowardly, unworthy of respect. Humanity could not afford more disrespect. Sung grabbed Ho's arm with a weak grip. "You have to go." "Captain, I'm not ready, I'm just—" "You're all we have." Sung's eyes burned with intensity despite his sickness. "The others are support staff. You're the only trained warrior besides me. If humanity withdraws, we'll never recover from the shame." Ho looked around the room. The other members of the delegation looked away. They knew it was true. They also knew what it meant. They were sending a 19-year-old boy against the greatest warriors in the galaxy. "I'll do it," Ho said quietly. No one celebrated. No one cheered. They all knew he was walking toward defeat, possibly death, but there was no other choice. The arena was massive. It filled an entire valley on surface, with seats carved into the surrounding mountains. Hundreds of thousands of aliens had gathered to watch the trial. Their voices created a constant roar of noise, like standing inside a thunderstorm. Ho walked onto the arena floor and felt very small. The other champions were already there. The champion stood like a mountain of muscle and rage. His forearms were thick as tree trunks, and his face wore a permanent expression of contempt. The assassin, Vex, was thin and fast, with silver skin that seemed to blur when she moved. The warlord was covered in scars and missing one eye. He had killed hundreds of enemies in personal combat. And then there was Ho, young, small, soft. The crowd saw him and began to laugh. "Is this a joke?" His voice boomed across the arena. "They sent a child." "Perhaps he is their servant," Vex said, her voice like silk. "Here to clean our boots after we compete." More laughter. It came from every direction, from every species. Even the neutral observers seemed amused. Ho said nothing. He took his position among the champions and waited. In the royal section, Princess Lyra leaned forward. Her attendant noticed her interest with growing concern. "Highness, surely you don't think the human can compete. He will be destroyed in the first challenge." "Perhaps," Lyra said, "or perhaps not, let us see." The first challenge was announced by the ancient judge, a floating being of pure light called the Arbiter. Its voice filled the arena without effort. "The first trial is endurance. Each champion will hold a burning ember in their bare hand. The last one to release it wins." Servants brought forward a tray of glowing stones. They were not ordinary stones. They burned with a heat that could melt metal. Each species had their own ember, calibrated to their biology. Each would cause the same level of pain. Ho looked at the ember meant for him. It glowed orange-red, beautiful and terrible. "You may withdraw at any time," the Arbiter said. "Simply open your hand." The champions took their positions. Servants placed the embers into their waiting palms. Pain exploded through Ho's hand. It was worse than anything he had ever felt. The heat burned through his skin immediately, cooking the flesh underneath. He could smell his own body burning. His vision went white. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to drop the stone, to end this madness. He closed his fingers around it instead. Around him, the other champions stood in various states of pain. The gritted his massive teeth. Vex the had closed her eyes, her face still as stone. The smiled as if the pain amused him. Minutes passed. The first to fall was a champion from a species Ho didn't recognize. He screamed and dropped his ember after only 3 minutes. The crowd murmured, "Weak." More champions fell. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The arena grew quieter as the remaining warriors held on. At 20 minutes, something unexpected happened. The roared with fury and opened his hand. The ember fell to the ground. His palm was ruined, burned down to the bone, but that wasn't why he stopped. His body was shaking uncontrollably. His superior healing ability had become his weakness. His nerves kept regenerating, feeling the pain fresh over and over again. He couldn't endure it. The crowd gasped. The mighty had fallen before the human child. Ho's hand was destroyed. The ember had burned through skin and muscle, blackening everything it touched. Tears streamed down his face. His teeth were clenched so hard they might shatter, but he didn't let go. 30 minutes. The finally gave up, his one eye wild with disbelief. How was the human still standing? 40 minutes. Vex, the legendary assassin who had never failed a mission, opened her hand with a scream of frustration. She looked at Ho with something new in her eyes. Fear. Only 3 champions remained. Ho and 2 others he didn't know. His vision was fading. The pain had become everything. He couldn't feel anything except the fire in his hand. But he could still choose. That was what the aliens didn't understand. Their bodies were stronger. Their healing was better. Their nerves were more advanced. But humans had something different. Humans could decide to suffer. They could choose to keep going when every part of them wanted to stop. It wasn't strength, it was will. 52 minutes. The second-to-last champion collapsed, unconscious from pain. The ember rolled from his limp fingers. 53 minutes. The final alien champion looked at Ho with wide eyes. This creature was supposed to be weak. This creature was supposed to be inferior. How was it still holding on? The champion made his choice. He opened his hand. The arena fell completely silent. Ho stood alone, the last champion standing. His hand was a ruin of burned flesh and exposed bone. His body swayed. His face was wet with tears and sweat, but he was still holding the ember. Release, the arbiter said. You have won. Ho opened his fingers. The ember fell, and then his legs gave out. He collapsed onto the arena floor, consciousness fading. But before the darkness took him, he heard something he didn't expect. Applause. It started small from somewhere in the crowd. Then it grew. Aliens who had laughed at him were now on their feet, clapping, stomping, roaring their approval. They didn't understand how he had done it. They didn't understand what will meant, but they understood what they had seen. A human had beaten them all. In the royal section, Lyra was standing. Her silver eyes were wide, her heart beating fast in her chest. She had lived for 300 years. She had seen warriors from every corner of the galaxy. She had never seen anything like this. She said, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, Highness. Find out everything about that human. His name, his history, everything. Bowed and hurried away. Lyra kept watching as medical teams rushed to help Ho. They were treating his hand, stabilizing his body. He was unconscious but alive. And tomorrow there would be another challenge. Tomorrow, she thought, I will see him again. She didn't understand what she was feeling. She had rejected princes and warriors and kings. She had remained cold to every suitor who had ever approached her. But watching this human boy choose to suffer, choose to endure, choose to win through pure force of will, something had changed inside her. Something that scared her. Something that excited her. The trial was far from over, and Princess Lyra had made a decision. Whatever happened next, she would not look away. Ho woke to pain. His right hand was wrapped in medical gel that glowed with a soft blue light. Technology, he learned later. It would heal his burns in days instead of months, but the pain remained, a constant reminder of what he had done. You're awake. Lieutenant sat beside his bed, relief on her face. You've been out for 14 hours. The trial. You won the first challenge. The entire summit is talking about you, she smiled slightly. They're not laughing anymore. Ho tried to sit up and winced. What about the second challenge? Combat, it starts in 6 hours. Smile faded. Ho, you don't have to compete. You've already proven. I'll compete. She didn't argue. She had seen that look in his eyes before. It was the look of someone who would not stop until the end. 6 hours later, Ho stood in the arena again. His hand was still wrapped in healing gel, but he could move his fingers. The pain was manageable. He had learned to live with pain. The combat challenge was simple. Each champion would fight one opponent. The fight continued until one warrior submitted or was unable to continue. Killing was allowed but not required. Ho looked at the bracket displayed in the air above the arena. His opponent would be the Warlord, the same warrior who had dropped out of the endurance challenge, the same warrior who wanted revenge. Entered the fighting circle with murder in his eye. He was 3 times Ho's size, covered in battle scars, carrying a curved blade that glowed with energy. He had killed hundreds of enemies in single combat. He was considered one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Ho entered the circle with nothing but his fists. "You should not have come, little human," said, his voice like grinding stones. "Your trick in the endurance trial means nothing here. This is real combat, and I will enjoy breaking you." Ho didn't respond. He was watching, learning. Every warrior had patterns. Every warrior had weaknesses. He just needed to find them. The Arbiter announced the start and attacked immediately. It was fast, much faster than his size suggested. His blade cut through the air toward Ho's neck. Ho ducked, feeling the energy blade pass inches above his head. He rolled sideways as follow-up strike cracked the ground where he had been standing. The crowd roared. They expected this to be quick. They expected the human to fall in seconds. But Ho kept moving. He didn't try to match strength. That would be suicide. Instead, he danced around the massive warrior, staying just out of reach, forcing to chase him. Every attack missed by inches. Every strike found only air. Grew frustrated. "Stand still and fight, coward." Ho remained silent. He was counting, always led with his right arm. He always stepped forward with his left foot. He always left his left side open for a split second after a heavy swing. Pattern recognized, weakness found. Roared and launched his most powerful attack, a spinning slash meant to cut Ho in half. But Ho had been waiting for it. He stepped inside the arc of the blade, too close for it to hit him, and drove his elbow into his throat. The choked, his grip on the blade loosened. Ho grabbed his wrist and twisted. The blade fell. Before could recover, Ho was behind him, wrapping his arms around the warrior's thick neck. A chokehold, simple, effective, and something had never seen before. Thrashed wildly, he threw himself against the ground, trying to crush the human beneath him. Ho's ribs cracked. Blood filled his mouth, but he didn't let go. Humans had invented 1,000 ways to fight. Martial arts from every culture, techniques refined over centuries of war. Ho knew them all. And right now, he was using a basic rear naked choke that any human child could learn. Had never encountered it before. His movements grew slower. His oxygen was running out. His brain was failing. He clawed at Ho's arms, drawing blood, but the human held on. Finally, his hand slapped the ground 3 times. Submission. Ho released him and stumbled back, barely able to stand. His ribs were broken. His arms were bleeding. His healing hand had torn open again. But he had won. The arena exploded with noise. Cheers and disbelief mixed together in a deafening wave. The tiny human had defeated one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. "Impossible," someone shouted. "He cheated," another voice cried. Silence. The Arbiter's light flared and the crowd went quiet. The human used no forbidden techniques. The victory is legitimate. Slowly rose to his feet. He looked at Ho with an expression that was hard to read. Respect, hatred, perhaps both. "What are you?" he asked quietly. "Human," Ho answered, "just human." Before anyone else could speak, a new voice rang across the arena. "I invoke the right of claiming." Every head turned toward the royal section. Princess Lyra was descending from her seat, walking down the steps toward the arena floor. Her silver gown flowed behind her like liquid starlight. Her face was calm, determined, beautiful beyond words. The crowd fell into shocked silence. The right of claiming was an ancient law. It allowed a member of the royal family to claim any warrior who proved themselves worthy in formal combat. It was rarely invoked. It was never invoked for someone outside the major species. And it was never invoked by Princess Lyra, who had rejected every suitor for 300 years. Lyra walked across the arena floor until she stood before Ho. He was swaying on his feet, barely conscious, covered in blood and burns. He looked at her with confused eyes. "What are you doing?" he managed to whisper. She placed her hand on his chest. Her touch was cool and gentle against his racing heart. "By the ancient laws of my people," Lyra announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena, "I have the right to claim a champion who proves worthy in combat." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I claim this warrior. I declare him mine." The silence lasted for 5 long seconds. Then chaos erupted. "This is outrageous," someone shouted. "A human, she chooses a human. The law cannot allow this." But the law did allow it. The arbiter confirmed it moments later. The claim was valid. The human was now bound to the princess under ancient tradition. Ho barely understood what was happening. His vision was fading. His body was failing. He felt Lyra's arms catch him as he fell. "Rest now," she said softly, her voice meant only for him. "You've done enough for today." "Why?" he asked, fighting to stay conscious. "Why me?" She looked at him with those silver eyes, and for a moment her cold mask cracked. Something warm and uncertain appeared beneath it. "Because you are different," she said. "Because you made me feel something I thought I had forgotten how to feel." "What's that?" "Curious," she smiled slightly. "Now sleep, little warrior. Tomorrow we will have much to discuss." Ho's eyes closed. He fell into darkness, held in the arms of an alien princess who had just changed the course of galactic history. In the stands, Captain Sung watched with wide eyes. He had recovered enough to attend the trial, and now he sat in stunned silence. His young subordinate, the boy who was added as an afterthought, had just been claimed by the most powerful princess in 3 star systems. "What happens now?" one of the delegation members asked. "I have no idea," Sung admitted. "But I think humanity's role in this galaxy just became much more complicated." Far across the arena, in a shadowed section reserved for lesser royalty, a figure watched with burning hatred in his eyes. Prince of the Empire had planned to claim Lyra himself at this summit. He had arranged everything: the political alliances, the displays of power, even the poisoning of the human captain to ensure their delegation would be humiliated. And now a human had ruined everything. Turned to his advisor, his voice cold with fury. "Find out everything about this human warrior, his weaknesses, his fears, everything. And then, my prince. And then I will destroy him. No human will take what belongs to me." The advisor bowed and disappeared into the shadows. The game had only just begun. Ho woke in a room made of crystal. The walls shimmered with soft light, constantly changing colors like the inside of a pearl. The bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever felt. The air smelled of flowers he couldn't name. He sat up slowly. His injuries had been healed. His hand was whole again, though slightly paler than before. Even his cracked ribs no longer hurt. "You're awake." Lyra sat in a chair near the window, watching him with those silver eyes. She wore simpler clothes now, a white robe that made her look almost human. Almost. "Where am I?" Ho asked. "The embassy, my quarters." She stood and walked toward him. "You've been sleeping for 2 days. Our medical technology is advanced, but even we can't heal a body instantly. You needed rest." Ho looked around the room. It was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. "This is where you live." "When I'm at the summit, yes." She sat on the edge of his bed, close but not touching. "Do you understand what happened in the arena? You claimed me." Ho's voice was flat. "I'm yours now like property." Lyra's expression flickered. Was that guilt? Regret? That's how many would see it, yes. The right of claiming was created in ancient times when warriors were prizes to be won, but that's not why I invoked it. Then why? She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "I have been alive for 327 years. In that time I have met warriors from every species in the galaxy. They come to me seeking power, seeking alliance, seeking the status that comes from standing beside a princess. They look at me and see a prize, a trophy, a political tool." She turned to face him directly. "But when I watched you in the arena, I didn't see someone who wanted to win for glory or power. I saw someone who chose to suffer because he had no other choice. I saw someone who used his mind when others used only their strength. I saw someone who didn't break, even when everything in the universe wanted him to." Ho didn't know what to say. He had expected to be treated as a slave or, at best, a pet. He hadn't expected honesty. "I still don't understand," he admitted. "You could have anyone, why choose me?" Lyra smiled, and it transformed her face. For a moment she looked almost young. "Because you are interesting. Your species is called weak, yet you do something none of the superior races can do." "And what's that?" "You grow." She leaned forward slightly. "They are mighty, but they are exactly as mighty as they were 1,000 years ago. They are brutal, but their brutality has not changed since their first war. Every species in the galaxy reached their peak and then stayed there. But humanity. 10,000 years ago you lived in caves. Now you walk among stars." Her eyes gleamed. "I want to know where you will be in another 10,000 years. I want to understand what makes your species different, and perhaps," she hesitated, "perhaps I want to be part of it." Ho sat in silence, processing her words. He had spent his whole life being told he was part of a weak species, a young species, an inferior species. He had never thought of human potential as something special. But Lyra was right. Humanity changed. Humanity evolved, not just in their bodies but in their minds, their technology, their very souls. No other species did that. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "Nothing you don't want to give." Lyra stood and walked to the window. "The claim binds you to me politically, but I will not treat you as a possession. Stay here and learn. Study our technology, our history, our ways. In return, teach me about humanity. Help me understand your species." "And after the summit?" "That depends on you." She turned back to face him. "If you wish to return to Earth, I will release the claim. You will be free, but if you choose to stay..." Something vulnerable appeared in her expression. "I would like that, very much." Before Ho could respond, the door opened. A guard stepped inside, looking nervous. "Highness, forgive the interruption. Captain of the human delegation requests an audience." Lyra nodded. "Send him in." Captain Sung entered the room, his eyes immediately finding Ho. Relief flooded his face. "Ho, thank the stars you're all right." "Captain," Ho stood, wincing slightly. "I'm sorry I didn't." "Don't apologize." Sung moved forward and gripped Ho's shoulder. "You represented humanity better than any of us could have. What you did in that arena, it changed everything." "What do you mean?" Sung glanced at Lyra, who nodded permission for him to continue. "Since the princess's declaration, 17 species have requested formal talks with Earth's delegation. We had no allies before this summit. Now we have offers from some of the most powerful empires in the galaxy." Ho didn't understand. "Because of me." "Because they saw what you did." Sung's voice was thick with emotion. "They saw a human refuse to surrender. They saw a human outthink and outfight opponents who should have been unbeatable. You made them respect us, Ho. For the first time since we joined the galactic community, they actually respect us." Lyra spoke quietly. Your species has been given an opportunity. What happens next depends on how you use it. Ho felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was 19 years old. He was supposed to be a simple soldier, not a symbol for all of humanity. But life didn't always give you the role you expected. "There's something else," Sung said, his expression darkening. "We've received intelligence about the poisoning. It wasn't random. Someone specifically targeted our delegation to prevent us from competing." "Who?" Ho asked. "We don't know yet, but whoever it was, they're not going to be happy that their plan failed." That night after Sung left, Ho stood on the balcony of Lyra's quarters. The alien moon spread out below him, covered in lights from 100 different civilizations. Ships moved through the sky like glowing fish. Lyra joined him, standing close enough that he could feel the cool temperature of her body. "You're worried," she said. "It wasn't a question. I didn't ask for any of this. The attention, the responsibility, the enemies. No one asks for such things. They simply come." She looked up at the stars. "When I was young, I dreamed of adventure. I wanted to explore the universe, to discover new things, to live a life worth living. Instead, I was locked away, guarded and protected, valued only for my political worth." "That sounds lonely." "It was." She turned to face him. It still is." A pause. "That's why I chose you, Ho, not just because you're interesting, but because when I watched you refuse to break, I thought, maybe I'm tired of being locked away. Maybe I want to know what it feels like to choose something for myself." Ho looked at her. In the starlight, she seemed less like an alien princess and more like a young woman searching for meaning. "I don't know what I can offer you," he said honestly. "I'm just a soldier from a small planet." "You offer me choice." She smiled slightly. "That's more than anyone else has given me in 300 years." Far below, in the shadows of the embassy, a figure watched them. He had been planted here months ago, waiting for the right moment. His orders had just arrived. The human must die. Prince didn't care how, he just wanted it done. The assassin slipped away into the darkness, making his plans. The human was protected by security now, but no protection was perfect. There would be opportunities. And when the opportunity came, he would strike. The first attempt came 3 days after the claiming. Ho sat in the dining hall, eating breakfast with some of Lyra's attendants. The food was strange but good, mostly vegetables and proteins he didn't recognize. He had adapted quickly, as humans always did. He was halfway through his meal when he noticed something odd. A faint smell, almost hidden beneath the spices. Something bitter, something wrong. He stopped eating. "Is something wrong?" asked from across the table. Ho stared at his food. The smell was coming from the purple fruit on his plate. He lifted it carefully and sniffed it directly. Poison, he was certain. "Get Lyra," he said quietly. "Don't touch any of the food." An hour later, the diplomatic incident was in full swing. The purple fruit had been laced with a toxin that would have killed a human within minutes. The security team couldn't explain how it had happened. Their systems had detected nothing. "Human senses are remarkably acute," a scientist explained to Lyra. "Their olfactory capabilities exceed our own by several factors. The poison was designed to be undetectable to senses, but the human noticed it immediately." Lyra looked at Ho with new respect. "You saved your own life." "Luck," Ho said. "I almost didn't notice." "No, not luck." She turned to her security captain. "Double the guards, triple the scans. Someone wants my chosen dead, and I will not allow it." The second attempt came a week later. Ho was touring the outer sections of the embassy, accompanied by 2 guards. The tour included a viewing platform that extended into space, protected only by an energy shield. They were halfway across the platform when the shield failed. The vacuum of space pulled at Ho's body. His lungs screamed for air. His blood began to boil. The guards were caught by automated safeties and pulled back to the main structure, but the system ignored Ho. It had been programmed to treat him as expendable. He had perhaps 30 seconds before he died. His emergency suit activated, a thin layer of protection that every human delegate wore. It wasn't designed for prolonged space exposure, but it gave him time, just barely. Ho pulled himself along the platform, fighting against the vacuum with every ounce of strength he had. His vision was going dark. His body was failing, but he kept moving. 20 seconds, 15, 10. His fingers found the emergency hatch. He pulled it open and fell inside as the door sealed behind him. Oxygen flooded the small chamber. He lay on the floor, gasping, trembling, alive. The security review afterward revealed deliberate sabotage. Someone had the shield to fail at that exact moment and altered the safety protocols to ignore human life signs. "This wasn't a random attack," Lyra said, her voice cold with fury. "Someone inside the embassy is working against us." Captain Sung arrived shortly after, his face tight with concern. "This is the second attempt in 10 days. We need to get Ho out of here." "And go where?" Lyra demanded. "The entire summit is looking for signs of human weakness. If we hide Ho away, everything he accomplished will be forgotten. He'll be seen as a coward who needed protection." "Better a living coward than a dead hero," Sung replied. "No," Ho spoke from his place on the medical bed, where healers were treating his space exposure damage. "The captain is wrong." Both Lyra and Sung looked at him. "If I hide," Ho continued, "whoever is doing this wins. They prove that humans can be scared off, that we're not worth respecting. I won't give them that." "You could die," Sung said. "I could die crossing the street back home. At least here my death might mean something." Sung stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "When did you become so brave?" "I'm not brave, I'm just stubborn," Ho tried to smile. "It's a human thing." The third attempt came 3 days later. This time, there was no subtlety. Ho was walking through the lower sections of the embassy when 4 figures emerged from the shadows. They were massive warriors with 4 arms and armor that covered their entire bodies. They weren't guards. They were mercenaries. "The prince sends his regards," one of them said. They attacked. Ho had no weapons. He had no armor. He had nothing but his training and his will. The first swung a massive fist toward his head. Ho ducked under it and drove his elbow into the alien's knee joint, hitting the only weak spot in anatomy. The warrior stumbled. The second and third attacked together. Ho rolled between them, using their bulk against them, making them strike each other. He grabbed a piece of debris from the ground and threw it into one attacker's eyes. The fourth caught him from behind, wrapping 4 arms around his body in a crushing grip. Ho felt his ribs cracking again. He couldn't breathe. He was going to die. But humans don't give up. He threw his head backward, slamming his skull into the face. The alien's grip loosened for just a moment. Ho twisted free and grabbed this arm, using every technique he knew to lock the joint and bring the warrior down. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, all 4 were on the ground. 1 was unconscious. 2 were groaning in pain. The 4th was looking at Ho with something like terror. "What are you?" he whispered. Ho stood over him, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen wounds. "Tell your prince that I don't die easily, and tell him that if he wants to kill me, he should come and do it himself." He kicked the once more for good measure, then stumbled toward the nearest exit. Captain Sung found him 10 minutes later, following the trail of blood. By then, Ho was leaning against a wall, barely conscious. "Ho, I'm okay." He wasn't okay, he was far from okay, but he was alive. 4, I left them back there. Sung stared at him. "You beat 4 mercenaries by yourself." "They underestimated me." Ho managed a weak smile. "Everyone does." Lyra arrived moments later, running in a way that princesses weren't supposed to run. When she saw Ho's condition, something in her expression shattered. "Get the healers," she ordered her guards, "now." She knelt beside Ho, taking his hand in hers. Her silver skin was cool against his blood-stained fingers. "You could have died," she whispered. "Didn't though. This is my fault. If I hadn't claimed you, then I would still be a nobody and humanity would still be a joke." Ho squeezed her hand weakly. "Don't regret it, I don't." She looked at him with eyes that were suddenly very human, wet, afraid, caring. When had she started caring? She had claimed him as a curiosity, an investment, a fascinating specimen. She had told herself that she was interested in studying his species, in understanding human potential. But watching him fight for his life again and again, refusing to surrender no matter the odds, she had started feeling something else entirely. Something dangerous, something wonderful. Something that felt terrifyingly like love. "The prince behind this will pay," she said quietly. "I don't know which one it is yet, but I will find out. And when I do, I will make him regret ever threatening what is mine." Ho closed his eyes. "Just don't get yourself hurt. I'd hate to have to save you." Despite everything, Lyra smiled. "Rest now, my champion. The shadows are moving against us, but they haven't won yet, and they won't win as long as we stand together." In his hidden chamber, Prince received the news of the failed assassination. His advisor stood before him, trembling. "Four, my prince, he defeated four alone." His face twisted with rage. "How is this possible? He's human." "It seems we have underestimated the species." "No more games," stood his decision made. "If hired killers cannot do the job, then I will invoke the ancient law myself, the challenge of blood." The advisor went pale. "My prince, the challenge is to the death if you lose." "I won't lose." Eyes burned. "I am a warrior of 300 years. This human is a child. I will kill him in front of the entire summit, and then I will claim Lyra for myself, as it should have been from the beginning." The pieces were set. The final confrontation was coming. And only one would survive. The announcement came at dawn. Prince stood in the center of the great hall, surrounded by the gathered delegates of 100 species. His voice carried to every corner. "I invoke the challenge of blood. By the ancient laws of my people, I claim the right to challenge any who holds what should be mine." Murmurs swept through the crowd. That was old, rarely used, and always deadly. It allowed a member of the royal family to challenge anyone who stood between them and something they desired. Pointed directly at Ho. "I challenge this human. If I win, Princess Lyra's claim is void and she will become my bride. If I lose," he smiled coldly, "but I won't lose." Ho stepped forward. He had expected this. Ever since surviving the assassination attempts, he had known the prince would make his move. Now it was here. "I accept," Ho said simply. Chaos erupted. The human delegation tried to protest. Captain Sung demanded an alternate champion. Even representatives from other species spoke against the match. "This is murder," one delegate said. "The prince has trained for 300 years. The human has trained for less than 20. It is not a fair fight." "The law does not require fairness," replied. "It requires combat. I have issued the challenge. The human has accepted. This is the way of the—" The arbiter floated forward, its light pulsing with ancient authority. "The challenge is valid. The combat will take place at sunset. Death is the only acceptable conclusion." Lyra found Ho in his quarters, preparing for the fight. His movements were calm, almost peaceful. It terrified her. "Withdraw the claim," she said immediately. "If I renounce you publicly, has no grounds for challenge. You can walk away." Ho continued stretching. "And then what? He marries you against your will. He uses you as a political tool for the rest of your life." "That doesn't matter." "It matters to me." He finally looked at her. 3 weeks ago, I was nobody. A last-minute addition to a delegation that no one respected. You gave me a chance to be something more. You made me matter. I don't want you to die for me. Neither do I, he smiled slightly, so I'll just have to not die. Lyra grabbed his shoulders, her cool fingers digging into his skin. This is not a game, is one of the greatest warriors in the Empire. He has killed opponents you cannot even imagine. You are skilled, but you are human. You are young. You are. I know what I am. Ho placed his hands over hers. I'm the youngest warrior at the summit. I'm from a species everyone considers weak. I have no advantages, no special powers, no centuries of training. Then how can you possibly win? Because I have something he doesn't understand. Ho's eyes met hers with absolute certainty. I have nothing to lose, fights to gain power. I fight to protect you. He has everything to lose. I've already lost everything just by being here. That makes no sense. It's a human thing. He pulled her hands down and held them. Trust me, please. She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. If you die, I will never forgive you. That seems fair. Sunset came too quickly. The arena was packed with every species at the summit. This was the event everyone wanted to see. The impossible human against the prince. A fight to the death between the old ways and something entirely new. Entered first. He wore ceremonial armor that had belonged to his ancestors for 1,000 generations. He carried a blade of pure energy that could cut through starship hulls. His face was confident, almost bored. Ho entered wearing simple clothes. No armor, no weapons, just a young man walking toward death. The crowd fell silent. This is madness, someone whispered. The human has no chance, another said. Emperor watched from the royal section, his face unreadable. Beside him, Lyra gripped the arms of her seat so hard the crystal cracked beneath her fingers. The arbiter rose above them all. The is now in session. The combat ends only with death. No mercy, no surrender, begin. Attacked immediately. His blade moved faster than the eye could follow, cutting through the air in deadly arcs. Ho dodged, rolled, and twisted, staying just ahead of each strike. But just ahead wasn't enough. The blade caught his arm, cutting a deep gash. Then his leg. Then his side. In the first minute, Ho was bleeding from 6 wounds. Laughed, "Is this the great human champion? You can barely stand." He was right. Ho's left leg was weakening from the cut. His arm was losing strength. Blood dripped onto the arena floor in a steady stream. But his eyes never stopped watching. Every attack made, Ho studied. Every pattern, every habit, every tiny weakness. He was learning even as he bled. Didn't notice. He was too busy enjoying himself. 300 years of training, the prince said, circling his prey. 300 years of perfecting every technique. What do you have? 20 years of scratching in the dirt. Ho said nothing. He was counting, favored his right side. He extended too far on his thrust attacks. He paused for half a second between combinations. Half a second, that was all Ho needed. Attacked again, a massive overhead strike meant to end the fight. Ho didn't dodge this time. He stepped forward inside the arc of the blade and grabbed his wrist with both hands. The prince's eyes widened in shock. No one had ever gotten this close. Ho twisted, his grip weakened. The energy blade clattered to the ground. And then the real fight began. Ho didn't fight like a warrior of the galaxy. He fought like a human. Elbows and knees, headbutts and bites, grappling and choking. Every dirty trick humanity had invented over 10,000 years of killing each other. Had never faced anything like it. He was stronger, faster, better trained. But Ho was fighting with a ferocity that had no name. He clung to the prince like a wild animal, striking every weak point, exploiting every opening. They crashed to the ground, rolling across the arena floor, landed punches that should have shattered bone. Ho kept coming. His nose was broken, his ribs were cracked, Blood filled his mouth. He kept coming. "Why won't you die?" screamed. Ho didn't answer. He wrapped his legs around Ho's waist and his arms around the prince's neck, locking in a chokehold that no amount of strength could break. Thrashed, he beat against Ho's body. He drove them both into the ground again and again. But the human didn't let go. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Struggles grew weaker. His face began to change color. His hands, once clawing with fury, now slapped weakly against Ho's arms. "Do you yield?" Ho whispered through broken teeth. "Never," choked. "Then die." Ho held on until the prince stopped moving. He held on until the arbiter confirmed death. He held on until his arms could no longer feel. Then he released the body and collapsed beside it. The arena was silent. Ho lay in a pool of his own blood, barely breathing. His vision was fading. His body was broken in ways he couldn't count, but he was alive. And was not. The silence broke like a wave. The crowd exploded with sound. Cheers, screams, disbelief. Every species at the summit was on their feet, looking at the impossible thing they had just witnessed. A human, the weakest species in the galaxy, had killed a prince in single combat. Lyra was running before she knew she had moved. She crossed the arena floor and fell to her knees beside Ho, pulling his broken body into her arms. "Ho, stay with me." His eyes opened slightly. Through the blood and pain, he managed to smile. "Did I win?" Tears streamed down her silver face. "You won. You impossible, stubborn, beautiful human, you won." "Good." His eyes began to close. "Tell everyone. Tell them humanity is not weak. Tell them we never give up." "I'll tell them, I promise. Just stay awake, please." "Tired," he murmured, "so tired." Medical teams were rushing toward them. Healers with technology that could bring people back from the edge of death, but they needed him to hold on. Lyra held him, pressing her forehead against his. "Stay with me, Ho, that's an order. Your princess demands it." His smile widened slightly. "Since when do I take orders?" "Since now, since always, stay with me." He didn't answer. His body went limp in her arms. But his heart was still beating, weak and slow, but beating. The healers arrived. They took him from her arms and began their work. Lyra watched, helpless, as they fought to save the life of the man who had just changed the galaxy. Around them the whispers spread. The humans were watching. They were watching. Every species at the summit was watching. And for the first time, they weren't looking at humanity with amusement or pity. They were looking with fear. Because if this was what one human could do, what would happen when the rest of them arrived? The answer hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Everything would change. For 3 days, Ho drifted between life and death. The healers worked without rest, using technology that could rebuild shattered bones and replace damaged organs. But the human body was different from anything they had treated before. It fought back against their methods. It tried to heal itself, even when that healing was slower and less complete. "His body doesn't trust us," one healer explained to Lyra. "It's trying to do everything itself." "That sounds like him," she replied softly. She didn't leave his side. Not for food, not for sleep, not for the dozen urgent political matters that demanded her attention. Her attendants brought her reports, and she read them while holding Ho's hand. The news from the summit was extraordinary. Prince's death had exposed a massive conspiracy. His allies had been planning to seize control of the throne, using Lyra as a political tool to legitimize their claim. Evidence of the assassination attempts led back to his faction, revealing corruption that reached into the highest levels of the empire. Emperor moved quickly. Supporters were arrested, tried, and exiled. The plot was crushed before it could spread. And in the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The galaxy began to pay attention to humanity. The delegation, the same ones who had laughed at the human ship, requested a formal meeting. The assassins, who had considered humans beneath notice, asked to study their fighting techniques. Even the ancient, who respected nothing but strength, sent gifts and words of honor. A human had beaten in endurance. A human had beaten in combat. A human had killed a prince in single battle. The weak species was weak no longer. Captain Sung met with delegation after delegation, negotiating treaties and alliances that would have seemed impossible 3 weeks ago. Earth's position in the galactic community was changing by the hour. "We came here hopping to be ignored," he told his team. "Now they're offering us seats at every major table, all because of one young soldier who refused to give up." On the 4th day, Ho opened his eyes. Lyra was asleep in the chair beside his bed, her silver hair falling across her face. She looked younger when she slept, more human, more real. He watched her for a long moment, remembering everything that had happened. The arena, the pain, the choice to keep going when everything told him to stop. Her eyes opened, catching him watching her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're awake," she said finally. "You're still here." "Of course I am." She sat up, pushing her hair back. "You're mine, remember. I don't abandon what belongs to me." He smiled weakly. "I thought you said you wouldn't treat me as a possession." I lied, but she was smiling too, her silver eyes wet with tears she didn't try to hide. "You scared me, Ho. You stopped breathing twice. The healers thought they'd lost you." "Sorry." "Don't apologize." She took his hand, holding it between both of hers. "Just promise me you'll never do that again." "I can't promise that, you know I can't." She laughed softly, the sound mixing with her tears. "No, I suppose not. You're human. You'll keep doing impossible things until the universe finally manages to kill you." "Is that a problem?" "No." She leaned forward and pressed her lips against his forehead. "It's why I chose you." Recovery took another week. Human bodies healed slower than technology preferred, but they healed completely. By the time Ho was able to walk again, his wounds had become scars, and his scars had become stories. Captain Sung visited him every day, bringing news from the negotiations. "The Emperor has offered Earth a formal military alliance," he said on the 5th day. "The first between humanity and a major galactic power." "In exchange for what?" "Nothing. Well, almost nothing," Sung smiled. "He wants cultural exchange. He wants to understand how humans think, how we fight, how we grow so quickly. Apparently his daughter has been very persuasive about the value of studying our species." Ho glanced at Lyra, who looked away with an expression that might have been embarrassment. "And the other species?" 17 formal alliance offers and counting. The one to send students to Earth to learn human combat techniques. They have offered warrior exchanges. Even they are interested. Sung shook his head in disbelief. 3 weeks ago, we were a joke. Now we're the most interesting species in the galaxy." That evening, Ho was strong enough to walk to the balcony. Lyra joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "Why did you really choose me?" he asked. "That first day, I was nothing. A last-minute replacement on a delegation nobody respected." Lyra considered the question for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because you were nothing and you didn't believe it." She turned to face him. "Every great warrior I've met believes in their own legend. They see themselves as heroes, as chosen ones, as figures of destiny. But you had no legend. You had no destiny. You only had certainty." "Certainty about what?" "That you would keep going. No matter what happened, no matter how badly you were hurt, no matter how impossible the odds. I saw it in your eyes the first time that shoved you aside. You didn't react with fear or anger. You just adapted and kept walking." Ho was quiet, processing her words. "I wanted to see what you would become," Lyra continued. "I wanted to understand the potential I saw in you, but now," she hesitated, "now I want something different." "What?" I want to stand beside you while you become it." She took his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth, silver against bronze. They were different species from different worlds, and yet somehow in this moment they were the same. "I don't know what the future holds," Ho said. "I don't know if I can be what you see in me." "Neither do I," Lyra smiled. "But I'd like to find out together, if you're willing." "Your Highness, are you asking me to stay?" "No," she stepped closer, her silver eyes meeting his. "I'm asking you to choose. The claim is just politics. What I want is real, but only if you want it too." Ho looked at her. 3 weeks ago he had been a nobody, a soldier, a replacement. Now he stood beside an alien princess who had changed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined. He could go back to Earth. He could return to his old life, his old identity. He could be safe. Or he could stay here, in this strange new universe, and discover who he might become. The choice was simple. "I'll stay," he said. Lyra's smile was like sunrise. She pulled him into an embrace, her cool body pressed against his warmth. "Good," she whispered, "because I wasn't planning to let you leave anyway." The closing ceremony of the summit was the largest in history. Representatives from every species gathered to witness the formal alliances and treaties that had been negotiated. Humanity stood at the center of it all. Captain Sung represented Earth, signing documents that would change his species' place in the galaxy. Behind him stood the human delegation, standing tall for the first time since their arrival. And beside the princess, wearing ceremonial clothes that marked him as her chosen champion, stood Ho. The other species watched in silence. They had laughed at humanity when the summit began. They had called them weak, fragile, infant. They weren't laughing anymore. Emperor rose to address the gathering. His ancient voice carried across the hall. "Today we witness the birth of a new alliance. The Empire stands with humanity, not because they are strong by our standards, but because they have shown us a strength we did not understand." He paused, his eyes finding Ho in the crowd. "They grow. They adapt. They refuse to accept limits that others consider absolute, and that perhaps is more valuable than all the power in the universe." He raised his hand in a gesture of blessing. "May this be the beginning of a great friendship between our peoples, and may the galaxy come to understand what we have learned here today." Later, after the ceremony had ended and the delegates had scattered, Ho stood on the balcony one final time. Lyra was beside him, their fingers intertwined. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we return to the... You'll meet my family, learn our ways, drive my sisters absolutely insane with your human habits," she smiled. "And we'll figure out what kind of future we want to build, together." "That sounds complicated." "Everything worth doing is complicated," she leaned against him, "but I think we can handle it, don't you?" Ho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home, his people. They were still young in the eyes of the galaxy, still learning, still growing. But they weren't weak anymore. "Yeah," he said softly, "I think we can." Far below, on a dozen different ships, representatives of a dozen different species were sending messages home. They were reporting what they had seen at the summit. They were describing the human warrior who had defeated their greatest champions. And they were asking the same question that Lyra had asked herself when she first saw Ho walk across the arena floor. If this is what one of them can do, what happens when the rest arrive? The answer was still unknown, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And Ho, the youngest warrior at the summit, the boy who refused to break, had made sure of it. His story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But that, as they say, is a tale for another time.